Hi, my name is Chris and this is Battle Nonsense. A frame rate limiter is a very useful tool. You can use it to cap your frame rate at a lower value to reduce the GPU load and so the power consumption as well as the noise produced by your graphics card. It allows you to keep the frame rate inside the variable refresh rate range of your G-Sync monitor, and by limiting your frame rate to a value that your PC can always maintain, you get to enjoy games at a stable frame rate and so consistent input delay. Many games like Overwatch, Fortnite, Battlefield or CSGO have a frame rate limiter built into their game engine. Some allow you to dial in a specific value, while others are sadly not as flexible and only provide a few presets. If a game does not have a frame rate limiter, or if the provided presets don't work for you, then you can use a third-party software like the RiverTuner statistics server to limit your frame rate. Sadly, you can run into issues with third-party frame rate limiters, as these can interfere with recording software like OBS or other applications that provide an in-game overlay. This is why some players used a frame rate limiter that was hidden inside the NVIDIA driver and could only be enabled through the NVIDIA Inspector software. But while that allowed you to cap the frame rate without any additional software, it sadly did not perform as well as RTSS in my input delay tests. With the new 441.87 driver, NVIDIA introduced a new max frame rate setting inside the NVIDIA control panel. Here you can set a global frame rate limit that affects all applications, as well as separate values inside game-specific profiles. You can also just leave the global setting untouched and only enable the frame rate limit inside the profile of specific games, like those which don't have a frame rate limiter. Now to find out if this new frame rate limiter is any good, I measured the end-to-end delay that every player is affected by, which means the delay between the input, like pressing the left mouse button, and the gunfire showing up on the monitor. To measure that button-to-pixel delay, I use a high-speed camera and a gaming mouse which has an LED connected directly to the switch of the left mouse button. I then point the high-speed camera at the monitor and record what happens when I press the left mouse button. Inside the recorded high-speed footage, I then look for the frame where the LED turns on, and then I count the frames until I see the action triggered by that input, which gives me the delay between the button and the pixel. So to find out how NVIDIA's new frame rate limiter feature stacks up against RTSS and in-engine frame rate limiters, I first used the built-in frame rate limiter in Overwatch to test the input delay at 60 and 144 frames per second. Then I used RTSS to cap the frame rate, which, as expected, led to an input lag increase, as the in-engine frame rate limiters usually provide the lowest delays. Then I used the new frame rate limiter option inside the NVIDIA control panel to measure the input delay at 60 and 144 FPS. And as you can see here, the input delays that you get with NVIDIA's new frame rate limiter pretty much match those of RTSS. I then repeated the same tests at 60 and 144 FPS in Fortnite, where the results from NVIDIA's frame rate limiter and RTSS also show very similar input delays. But a good frame rate limiter isn't just about the input delay. The frame times, or frame pacing, is another important factor for a frame rate limiter. While a frame rate limiter which is part of the game engine provides the lowest input delay, it does not produce perfectly stable frame times. But to be fair, the small variation that you see here won't be the reason why you miss shots or have a bad kill-death ratio. It just shows that there's a trade-off when you want to get the lowest possible input delay. From my previous videos you know that one of the main reasons why gamers use RTSS is that it provides perfectly stable frame times, which of course requires that your PC is powerful enough to maintain the frame rate that you dialed in for the FPS limit. So I also tested how stable the frame times are with NVIDIA's new frame rate limiter, and as you can see here, they are extremely stable. So if you want the lowest possible input delay, then you must use the frame rate limiter that sits inside the game engine. But if a game does not have a frame rate limiter, or if you are not happy with the presets that you get in games like Fortnite, then you can simply use the new frame rate limiter feature inside the NVIDIA control panel to not only get the same input delay as you would get with RTSS, but also enjoy the same perfectly stable frame times and so consistent input delay. That said, NVIDIA could still improve this new feature by removing the current range restriction of 40 to 240 FPS. It would also be great to get an additional icon or any other form of notification inside the overlay, which informs the player that the frame rate limiter is active. And it would be great if I could change the frame rate limit inside the GeForce Experience overlay, Or at the very least, immediately use a new frame rate value when I change it inside the NVIDIA control panel while the game is running. Currently, you must restart the game when you do changes to the frame rate limiter inside the NVIDIA control panel, which is not exactly user-friendly. But despite that, it already is a great option when you want to cap your frame rate without having to install an additional application. And that's all for today. Big shout out to my patrons, as their support allows me to create videos like this one. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like, subscribe for more, ring the bell to get notified when I upload my next video, and I hope to see you next time. Until then, have a nice day and take care. My name is Chris, and this was Battle Nonsense.